I'm Frank Sayles Jr. for the Tifton Grapevine. Tifton City Council met in a special workshop on Thursday, January 9th to discuss changes to the Land Development Code and the Historic Preservation Commission guidelines regarding signage in the city. Among items discussed were illuminated signs and electronic graphic display signs, or EGDs, in the historic district as well as around the city. Any changes to the Historic Preservation Commission guidelines will need to be sent to Atlanta to the Historic Preservation Division of the Department of Natural Resources for review.
Let me just say right at the forefront, I hope I'm speaking to the business people about this question. My whole concern is that a business that's located in the historical district and the same type of business that's located outside the historical district needs the same guidelines. You don't need to have one bunch that's got to go to an HPC meeting, go through all the chaos and the aggravation, and then have that done. And we need to change something in the HPC manual, I understand that, so that those signs don't have to go before the HPC anymore. Yeah, because all I want is equality. I don't want a party balloon store, historical district, a party balloon store outside the historical district, and they have different competitive situations. But it is aggravating. We had people to stand up out here. We had these first meetings and say we wouldn't go into the HBC if we had to. Had some very good business people that came up and spoke right inside here and said they don't care anything about it because they don't want to go through the nonsense. Well, we all know it's not nonsense, but it is aggravating. And I think they have both inside and outside have to have the same rules. Now that's my opinion. The other four people may not even agree with that, and that's fine. But that's what I'd like to do is look at some way to make the signs the same throughout the historical district and the other districts. And let's throw it out there. I just think you're building a problem for business people. And we need businesses downtown in the historical district.
I think that the issue would be how that may be perceived in the effect of not having any sign regulation in the historic district by the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. So I don't know how that would be perceived. Deregulating any signage in the historic district, I don't know how that would be taken.
I see.
Rob, may I add something to your comment?
Yes.
If you'll read, if anyone brought their HPC manual, the Secretary for the Interior's standards for treatment of historic property, that's the federal government, is very specific about this. And it goes through and determines there are the standards for rehab, there are the standards for design. And I think if we do away, not only with the state aspect of it, if we do away with it completely, we jeopardize that blessing by the state. It flies in the face of everything that's in this manual with regard to what the Secretary of the Interior says. So the federal government is involved in this as well as the state government.
I think that's correct. I can tell you, Mayor, that I believe that there would be issues should we not have any sign regulation, in the historic district. I don't know that, but that's certainly something that could be.
I didn't mean no sign regulation. All sign regulation would come under you, right, Bert?
They all do now.
They all do now. It was just that everybody would come under him rather than.
But if you take the regulations that are in the HPC guidelines that we have. So our HPC guidelines are about as close to the federal set guideline standards as they come. I don't know if you remember Ms. Burns saying that they actually use our guideline many times when they're setting up new communities because it is that well first. I mean, it's that well put together. If you start changing, especially on specific topics that are inclusive, i.e. design, the ones that she just listed, then you are jeopardizing exactly what Mr. Eller said, in that you can lose that federal grant money opportunities because you can lose your accreditation, so to speak. Signs are something that have always been regulated to some extent within the historic district's specific ways. Those sizes were not just pulled out of the air; they were put together, by standard through time. And those backlighting or secondary lighting or indirect lighting, those issues were put in there because that is kind of what the federal guidelines states as you know, across the country. The problem you do run into is that, you know, you do have that possibility of losing accreditation if you modify too much within certain areas, signs being one of them.
And I think as a community, we're looking at what's happening right now with the Colony Mine and the old Ice House. Most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's from the historic thing right up there in Atlanta, Georgia. They don't live here. They don't buy groceries here. They don't pay taxes here. And I resent it. And, you know, I don't know that we need to be decertified. I certainly want people to be able to get the grant money. It's good. It helps us. But I think when it comes to sign things, I think we need to test it. I think we need to do it and test it because they are just suggestions.
But Jamie, you talk about equality within the business. There's inequality just based on zoning. I mean, it goes back to that basic level. If I want to put an industrial plant on Love Avenue, it doesn't matter if it's in the historic district or not. I can't put an industrial plant there. If I want to put a grocery store across the street from your house, I can't because zoning prohibits that.
That is zoning.
Right, that's what I said.
Well, this isn't zoning, this is signing.
But
you're signing for businesses.
But you're talking about
to be able to be competitive, whether they're inside the historical district or outside. That's all I'm saying. Well, let's go on because we aren't getting anywhere here. Did you ever answer my question? What are we supposed to strike, Marianne?
Option one basically, as I wrote it, and for y'all's consideration, was that that indirect lighting is generally the most appropriate means for illumination in the historic district. However, other types of illumination could be considered by the HPC on a case-by-case basis, based upon certain factors that the HPC would look at to determine whether or not different type of illumination would be more appropriate in that particular location, such as the neighborhood, the architecture, the type of lighting, and things of that nature.
I don't like that HPC being able to just decide on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
I don't like it.
I'm okay with option one, Rob.
This is a little bit more of a sticky wicket. I guess the question that you have, or the HPC people would have, is whether or not these EGD signs should be allowed in the historic district.
I'm in favor of the electronic display signs as long as they're not strobing and blinking and flashing. They're not, doing all this mess.
Yeah.
And they've got some limitations and boundaries on how many times they could change and other things that we're discussing.
I don't want any of these EGD or LED, whatever you want to call them, signs in the historic district, period, in any district. I have no problem going back to the backlit, the halo lighting or, those kind of things, but this flashes, scrolls, blinks, whatever, I would not be in favor of that.
Okay.
You put it in there, I pretty much guarantee that Ms. Burns and her group is going to strike that as part of her recommendations. So why put it in there? So I'm against EGD signs.
Is Ms. Burns in the audience? Ms. Burns lives in Atlanta. I'm not really worried about that. If she wants to strike it,
Well, I understand that. I'm thinking of our developers that want to develop commercial property here in Tifton. We may want to take advantage of those grants or tax credits to do the renovation to the building. It's going to be very hard or difficult for a developer won't spend his money if he's going to do a renovation, and it would be an incentive. That's why they're given to us, an incentive for us to do these changes, or we're going to do these renovations, or get these developers to develop the historic building.
Well, the DNR Historical Division would have to disqualify our zoning. Our guidelines. They would have to disqualify us. I just don't think they're going to do that. I think we ought to test it at least. Or we just roll over if they did.
Johnny, I'm not quite. What do you think?
I'm gonna excuse me from that.
Okay.
Council hopes to vote on the signage amendments within the next week or two, possibly at a special called meeting on January 16th. I'm Frank Sayles Jr., reporting for the Tifton Grapevine.
Well,